Hey, okay, so this is a quick reaction to the Bill and Ted Face the Music teaser trailer. All right, so they basically seem to just give away the entire plot of the film. Now, given the premise of the original Bill and Ted films were relatively simple. The first one, these two, they don't call them stoners, but they kind of are meant to be the layabouts, the slackers of their San Dimas High School. And they go on this adventure. They bring people from history to modern times, and they have all kinds of silly adventures along the way. Well, I mean, part of it really is this journey for these two who don't see a lot of potential in themselves except for this band. Then they suddenly learn that they're destined to be great. Okay, well, greatness is sort of what happens along the way in the first film. I actually wrote an entire, like theological Zen kind of ideology based around Bill and Ted back when I was in college, just as a fun little thought experiment to share with friends. Well, that one was entirely about like, oh, put yourself out in the world, learn about who you are in different scenarios, and test your proverbial mettle against other people, and just see who you really are when it comes down to it. And so you have these like late 80s early 90s California surfer type slackers who just goof around in their garage band but don't know how to even play the instruments. Well, they they actually have to do all this stuff in order to sort of learn who they are. And even at the end of the first film, Rufus says to the camera, to the audience, they do get better. And by the second film, they have a bit more budget, so they do a bit more of a supernatural adventure. And if you've ever read the comic books, and I highly encourage you to read the comic books because they were very creative in terms of the things that Bill and Ted faced there, and it was very much in keeping with the spirit of the films. You would see them go to heaven and hell and deal with limbo and battle death in various games in order to go off as they will, and even recruiting a couple of aliens in order to build good robot versions of them to take on the bad robot versions from the future. Well, yeah, all of that is absolutely ridiculous and zany and wacky, but guess what? It works. And the story ends up flowing okay, and yeah, it's really ridiculous, but it's fine. So I'm looking at the trailer, and in 1 minute 30 seconds, they bother to completely ruin the story by saying that they really haven't lived up to their potential. Now, bear in mind, this is even after they traveled through time to a point where they could go learn how to play the instruments really well, and then perform a song. Now, the whole idea here is that this ends up being the song that united the world. But they didn't bother actually writing their own song. They played God Gave Rock and Roll to You, which I think is by Kiss. And not even by like 70s Kiss, but by 80s Kiss, which was not as good as 70s Kiss. Even though 70s Kiss gave us I Was Made for Loving You. But that aside, there's a genuine feeling that I'm getting watching this, that it might not be everything that we really want it to be, but at the same time it could also be completely awesome because they're showing us all this stuff. And they could be leading us in an entirely wrong direction. One of the things about recent years with both film writing, television writing, and streaming shows is that many shows have bothered to get very smart with how they write things. They're willing to give something nuances and subtle layers and everything. So the question is, we see death interacting with them. Okay, well, how does that come into it? Do they die? Do they go to the afterlife or something like that? How exactly do they encounter death yet again? they see themselves in prison, all muscular and buff, and the prison versions of them are talking about whether or not apparently they sing some song there in prison, but I guess it's not very good. That's entirely possible to be an alternative timeline. That's my thought for that. The the trip to hell might be something entirely different. It might be something where they kind of go beyond time. They dial a different number or something like that. I'm not sure exactly. We don't know enough yet, unfortunately. But just in those 60 to 90 seconds that we get for the actual trailer, I get the feeling that it's probably going to go in a good direction because this is the original writers. So they didn't bring in some other writers to work on this. They've had time to develop the script. Both actors signed on to it. And they have other things that they could be doing, especially Keanu Reeves. So hopefully, even though we see all this stuff that looks like it's going to be absolutely stupid and not worth our time, it's entirely possible that this could be a good and interesting sequel to these two previous installments in the Bill and Ted franchise. Two films, which, by the way, that made a strong impression for a film company that was already on its way out, Orion Pictures, but also actually managed to leave an impression on the people who watched it. For a silly comedy, it ended up being just good enough in terms of everything that it had for you. One factor that I think plays into that is their willingness to just do montages. They do a house cleaning montage set to the William Tell Overture, but it's on like a synthesizer. And they did another montage at the mall of Beethoven playing, this really amazing, version of one of his songs on the synthesizer, and the others running around and getting in trouble in the mall, and it ended up being like this really interesting thing. It had some comedy to it. It had some fun to it. So in essence, I think that was really one of the charming aspects of just the first film alone. The second film was mostly just continuing the story, taking these two characters on this long journey through the supernatural realm. So in all, it's kind of difficult to tell. But I think it's fair to say that it'll at least be worth seeing, just so that we can say, okay, well, that's done. And then maybe they can write off and sign it off and close out the story. Unfortunately, we no longer have George Carlin around to reprise the role of Rufus. So hopefully they'll be able to do something there, but it'll be difficult to really work it out. Like maybe the timeline changed and Rufus is a different person now, a different performer. I don't know. But as it is, I'm still going to check it out because I am a fan of the Bill and Ted films. It's just going to be difficult to accept if the film is bad after what happened with Star Wars, both with the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy. I'm actually reading through the Timothy Zahn Heir to the Empire trilogy right now. So for me, that's how you actually handle a sequel. It's actually quite good. Anyway, well, that wraps up this video. Thanks for clicking over, and take care. Bye-bye.